So I just finished soloing next in the beta server legitly, like no using any safe spots or, well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, her attacks aren't that strong for wherever I was like 10 steps away. They still haven't fixed how if you're 10 steps away from next, her attack just magically does not seem to be able to hit. Even though if you look at next, you can clearly see that she's trying to attack you, but there's just no magical sparkles coming at you. So weirdly, Nex is very different on the beta server than on the actual live game, because normally in the live game you would pray melee and stand with a melee distance so it doesn't mage everybody, but for some reason her mage attack just sucks. While I was in the video, I'm praying like soul split the entire time, and I'm soul splitting back my HP. With all the abilities, I'm getting really good damage output. So the first ability on my action bar is it's a defensive shield that will heal me whenever I get hit instead of damage me. Which is good because if I need to heal, I'll just switch on the shield, wait the 2-second penalty where I can't use any abilities, then run within melee distance of next, and usually she hits like 1,500 with melee, which is a very good heal. Then the second ability is a 50% damage reduction for like 10 seconds. But the bad thing is, if I accidentally use this with the first ability, I only heal half the amount of what I would have healed. So for the third ability, it's supposed to help the first ability. The more I get hit, like the number of times I get hit, it'll reduce 3 seconds from the first ability's cooldown timer, which is good, but I'm not entirely sure how well it's helpful. Because even though it says it's supposed to reduce 3 seconds, I'm not sure if it meant per attack or just total. And the cooldown timer, it shows as a clock instead of seconds, so it's kind of hard to see exactly if it's helping or not. So for my fourth ability, it's just a basic ability, so I can use it fairly frequent. It does a 10% damage reduction for anything I get hit for about 10 seconds. So anything from my T to F is like a basic or threshold ability. So I have everything from my Q to F laid out on my keyboard as a 2 by like 5 rectangle on my keyboard so that I could just spam click through them. And really, it didn't matter which I clicked because they're mostly offensive, except for the first three, those are defensive. But I wasn't really worried about those. And my last three abilities on my bar are two thresholds and my ult. The first threshold ability is Asphyxiate, and that's just a mage attack. It does a fair amount of damage, and I did a video on this where even though you don't have mage bonus, it still hits fairly decent. And the last two is a threshold and an ultimate. They're really the same one, except the threshold is a weaker version than the ultimate. So for the first two phases, it's really easy. You could just soul split it all, even in a team. Just because for some reason, it's either you have a very high mage defense, or next just had its stats nerfed. So for the first two phases, you could just like soul split. It's not going to be a problem as long as you're doing a good damage output. You can soul split all your HP back. Later in the video, around 3 minutes 50, well, between 3 minutes 50 and 4 minutes, I start going killing Umbra. I gotta run to the center to lure next away from Umbra so I don't get the whole engulf shadow thing, which actually hits a lot. Like, it kind of looks like a lot. It hits constant 300s. Oh, earlier I got poisoned by Nex, and it didn't even last to like shadow phase, but it did hit like 400s each time, which was a lot. So for killing Umbra, I used this lure that I worked out back when I used to still do solos, back when it was like new. Now it's like not even worth the time. It's more efficient to just do duos, and if you have like a Titan, it's a whole lot faster. But anyway, the lure is just when Next comes up to melee you, you run around, run to the north, Next follows you, jumps to the north, you run to the center, Next jumps to the center, Next stops meleeing you if you do it right. But with the first ability on my bar, I stay in the middle, let Next melee me once after she jumps. This usually heals around like a 1300 if done correctly. So I repeat this for killing Umbra. I actually don't use that much food unless I was just messing around. So of course before I actually start the blood phase, I'm trying to keep my spec bar up. I'm not using my threshold because they have a fairly long cooldown and it doesn't take too long to kill Umbra, maybe a minute, but towards the end it's a whole lot faster. I was making sure I was using my Rocktail. Oh, I love how Rocktail, they heal above your maximum HP, which is good because I forgot to use my bonfire before I actually went in, so my HP wasn't as high as I wanted it to be. So for food, I was using Rocktails. They're actually better than Brews because it only is like a one-time heal to heal a ton, while with Brews you gotta sip one by one, and they only heal like 500s now. So this is somewhat good because fishing Rocktails is actually a very profitable way to get money now. So maybe people will do that for training fishing. But the only problem is Kingdom of Miscellanea, where a lot of the nests come from, well, as well as the giant mole, is not going to be as profitable as it was before. But of course, this is just the beta. It's gonna change. They're still doing fixes like hot fixes here and there every day. It's just the larger problems are gonna take a little longer to fix, which is good to know that they're updating the beta every day so that if more bugs come out, we could find them. Although I hope that they like post what they update somewhere on the forums because I haven't been able to find anything like that. So now I have a full spec bar. I want to learn next to the west wall, just because I like fighting next on the west wall. If you're in the middle, it's like Reavers could spawn to the north and south, and they're so spread out. So first thing I do, I wait for the Reavers to stomp their feet twice. That's usually my cue to attack next. So I get my Steel Titan on next. I go to my Threshold ability, use my Rapid Fire attack, which shoots 4 damage over 6 seconds. Once I finish using my Threshold attack, I use my ultimate ability that shoots 4 shots over 6 seconds, dealing 3000 damage each. Now that my spec bar is down, I use a spec recover so that I regain half my spec so I can use my Asphyxiate Threshold attack, which deals magical damage. And now that I have used all my spec, next has Call to her Siphon. She has one more attack before she heals 5000 HP from the Reavers, and my Titan saves it with one final combo for a successful solo blood phase. So at this point, my hand was kind of shaking because this was the first time I used this experimental inventory. I was going for a full out, like practically just claw next. Well, yeah, not claw, but just spec out next. Ignore the Reavers and just focus on offensive and see if I'm able to knock out all that HP before she heals from the first siphon. And that actually worked. On the first time I tried it, it worked. So I had a yak to pick up the food because if it worked, I would have dismissed my Titan, summon my yak, take the food because I'll need it later because I need the food for ice phase because the prison is gonna hurt. In one of the videos, I was doing a next duel with Darden on the beta server. I got comboed 8600 HP damage from the prison and the mage attack from next. I think the mage attack was like a 2100, but that's still a lot. Like if you, although the difference between next and like just Arma isn't really that big anymore, but still that is a large amount of HP and that is damage you cannot protect. Although you can protect it with the ultimate ability that I do use, so while I was killing the minion, I decided to pray mage and just tank the mage attacks because if I stayed melee distance and prayed melee, I would get wrecked by the mage, which would hit like 1200 if next mage me. And then there's the extra damage from the minion, which is, if you compare the two in the live game, it's very hard to choose between which is worse. Praying mage and stand far away or praying melee and stand up close. Although most people do just pray melee because next targets the person who's furthest away. Although there seems to be a bug where in the duel I did with Darden, the entire fight, even though I was closer to Nex and he was further away, I would be the one taking. But so for this, for some reason, I guess the only explanation is that with the new armor, this has a lot of mage defense to it. So Nex's mage attack is not as strong as it was before. So now starts the second hardest part, Ice Phase. Well, actually, it's not too hard now with the abilities because there is the Barricade ability, which I wasn't even sure at the time if it would work, but it does work. The Barricade ability, it's an ultimate ability, so it uses your whole spec bar, but it prevents all damage for 10 seconds, which includes the non-combat damage from the Ice Prison, which is very good because I get to completely protect myself from one of the Ice Prisons, but then I still need something for the other, like, 30 seconds where it's going to shoot another Ice Prison at me. So I was trying to use as much abilities as I can so I could raise my spec bar. I can't sip another spec restore because that's only like 1 per 3 minutes, which is a very long time. So I didn't get it up in time and I got hit a fairly high number. I wasn't sure what it was, but I did get my ultimate for the second time around. So I did have to use some Rock Tails for this. It's kind of cool how Rock Tails is gonna be, or I hope it is. Because if they're gonna make Bruise the best, again, it's gonna make Kingdom of Miscellanea good, but then I don't like how the best food is Bruise. So the previous Ice Prison, it hit like a 6000 on me, which is a lot. So I don't think it'll ever be possible to do next without armor. Because you still have to kill Glacies somehow, unless you plan to like nip it. So it's been a minute again, so I could use my Barricade ultimate ability where I get like a whole tortoise shell's shield all around me, which is kind of cool. It looks kind of funny. Anyway, so about the blood phase, I think the only thing that got me past it really was the Steel Titan. The Steel Titan added like so much damage. If you look back in the video, it did like a good 30% at least of the damage for the entire phase. Oh, I think a phase is around 16, 17, or 18k. I'm not really too sure about that, but the Titan, the fact that it can hit on next seems a little overpowered because on the previous tries I did on next where I was using it on the Reavers and then sometimes it would get on next, it was kind of annoying when it spec'd on the Siphon, which it made it heal so much. It seems that the Steel Titan hits just about the same on next than on the Reavers. So it's either it probably is ignoring the defense. I'm not entirely sure, but the difference in damage isn't really that big. So at the moment, I'm not really sure if the Titan. Well, the Titan is overpowered. The fact that it can hit next really well, it does even more damage than you can, and it's supposed to be the hardest boss in the game. Compared to other God Wars, it's okay if it hits them as hard, but on next, it shouldn't be hitting as often as it is now. So I did send in a bug report about this to have it checked out because it seemed a little overpowered because if maybe you're at Bandos and you're starting out, you're like level 130, you don't have like well turmoil isn't that useful now in the beta because prayer is supposed to help a little, it's not supposed to help like a huge amount. So if somebody starting out doesn't have like a steel titan and they're fighting over a world, the guy with the titan that hits a whole lot is gonna win like every single time. Whereas in the live game, it's not used that often because it's better to have a pack deck just because the Titan doesn't hit that often when you're specking unless you lower its defense. Which is good for bosses because bosses are supposed to have high defense. People shouldn't be like using Steel Titan on them. They should be used on sub bosses like Glacors, Tormented Demons. So by now I'm on the Zaros phase. Well, I honestly have no idea why it's called the Zaros phase. I just used to refer it as the final phase. But anyway, so when I was dueling with Darden, this phase used to hit fairly well. But then once I noticed that if you have Soul Split on and you have your Steel Titan spec, you Soul Split with the Steel. It's so funny. You Soul Split with the Steel Titan hits, which is definitely overpowered. Like if you have inventory, well not an inventory, just like a couple summoning flasks like I do in my inventory, just keep constantly specking and you use like no food on Zara's face. It's amazing. Okay, so to recap, the Steel Titan is overpowered that it's able to hit damage next. I mean, it's okay if it's some damage, but for it to be the same damage that you would if it was attacking a Reaver is it doesn't seem right. Then there's this fact that you could soul split, and anything your Titan hits, you soul split that back. Now, this seems like a concept that they put in deliberately, but with a Steel Titan, it's just too powerful. So for the Zaros phase, from start to finish, I used zero food. Well, I could have used zero food. I ate two rocktails, but that was just because I wanted to make sure I made the kill and not lose it just because I didn't want to save. And I soul split all the HP back with all the attack abilities and some of the defensive ones, as well as the soul splitting damage I got from the Steel Titan, which should probably not be there, although since they put it in deliberately, there's gotta be some point to it. But that's an interesting concept to have. But I'll probably just think more about this later. But so I finished soloing next. I got some. I forgot what I got. It was like a ring square or something. Also, if I'm going to be adding a little clip at the end for people who want to see the blood phase. It took about 31 seconds. It'll just be slowed down so you can watch it because it was a lot of action in like 31 seconds. So thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.